Have you ever wished that SCP Containment Breach had multiplayer? Have you ever wished that SCP Secret Laboratory wasn't a whole clusterfuck and it was more serious? Well, this can be whatever you want it to be because it takes your typical role playing, dice rolling, tabletop game and takes it into your hands so you can play with your friends. And you can play in the SCP world with your friends, I guess. Yeah. Anyway, this is the system I devised, and I made it so if you want to play an SCP One-shot with your friends, you can do that, and you can make the world pretty much however you want. Now, so far in this, I have basically two different one-shots, and I'm planning on adding more in the future, but I'm going to basically go over the two that are already made, how you can run them, how you can play them with your friends, and basically the whole 101. So, before we get started, I'm going to take a sip of water. And we're going to jump right back into this. So, the first thing you're going to need to know is this whole folder is going to be linked in description. This folder is basically your kit. It has everything you're going to need to run it. So, the first thing we're going to be looking at is this document right here. Yeah, we're going to open it up. So, this is what you give to your players as the DM. It has all your background information and everything you need to know. So it is a very short document. It's 3 pages in total. I wanted to create something so that it could take about 30 minutes to 15 minutes, depending on how fast you read and how fast you understand things, and if you're explaining it to players, to understand what they're about to jump into. And so that they can understand and you can just hop right into it. I didn't want like an hour of rule learning and explaining and character building. This should be a fun thing you can just jump right into. However, there is room for expansion. The system that I use isn't really devised to increase your level. You basically start where you are and that's it, which is fine for a one shot. But on like if you want to be a DM, you can change this to however you want. You can fit it for more with the 5E rules, depending on how long you want to run this out. But this is what I have so far. So basically, these two paragraphs are some um, general information about SCPs, just in case your players don't know. So it basically gives the basics. So it says what SCP stands for, what the three safety classifications mean: safety, safe, Euclid, and Keter. Um, for you guys, safe doesn't mean safe, it just means you can keep it in a containment box and it won't escape. Euclid means there's some security precautions needed to be taken for to keep it contained. And Keter basically means it's always trying to escape and it's very hard to keep contained. Um, and then second paragraph talks a little bit more about the system. So there are 3 types of staff that work at each SCP facility. For researchers, the security personnel, and the D class. And this basically explains what each one of them are. And so you'd give this to your players. They can read this, figure out what they want to do. And I split this up into 3 classes. So there's the junior research, the security rookie, and the D class personnel. And I keep everyone at the bottom of the food chain for now. Like they're just coming into this facility. That way, the players won't say, "Oh, if I'm like a senior researcher, wouldn't I know more about the facility?" No, you just got there a few weeks ago. So for the junior researcher, I say, I give them like an introductory paragraph. I say, "Congratulations, you're fresh out of Biochem Science Act. You can players can pick what their characters are, or if you're the DM, you can just give them a character. You graduated from college with all straight A's, and you've been approached by a recruiter looking to hire you. He seems a bit sketchy, but the job sounds interesting and it pays very well. Before you know it, you've been working at the SCP organization for about a month. Your work is still basic. You're helping a senior researcher study a Euclid or Keter SCP determined by dice roll or coin flip. Oh, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. Where was I? Determined by dice roll or coin flip. You don't know that much about what you're studying, but you have made some friends in the facility, and you know some rumors about the SCPs in the facility. So when I say Keter or Euclid SCP by dice roll, what I mean is like let's go to the first DM notes. So this is the list of all the SCPs in the facility. It's color coded, so you can easily find the class. So all the safe ones are oranges, all the Euclids are blue, and then the Ketters are yellow. So you could either flip a coin for Euclid and Keter, and then let's say for Euclid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you roll d6, or for Keter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you roll another. You will roll d6 for that, and then whatever it lands on. Let's say, for example, if it lands on uh, 096 Shy Guy, I wouldn't tell the players any of the colloquial names for the SCPs, such as Shy Guy, Coffee Machine, Dr. Bright. I would tell them just the number. That way, they don't get any predetermined notions on what they are, because it's really hard to remember all the numbers. And if a player does remember the number, I would just say, "Sure, your character could know that. However, uh, it's your choice to tell the other players or not, or if you want to play it like blind." But for 096, I'd basically say you've been working with a head of researcher. Let's say his name is Dr. Jenkins. And Dr. Jenkins is letting you help just take down certain notes on the thermals inside the cell. You know that there is no cameras and no one's allowed to look at this SCP to give them a little bit of a hint on what might happen if you do. Um, you've heard that in the past there was a breach and all photos of it had to be burned. And that would be a good way of giving the players a hint on what it is. Or like if you want to play it a little bit more like by the cuff, you could just give them the documents for like I link them the page for SCP-096. It's important to say don't tell your players not to look up the SCPs, only let them learn it through you. So as the junior researcher, every class has different skills. They all have one unique role skill. For the junior researcher, they can roll if they've heard rumors that have to do with the current situation. So, for example, let's say with the first one shot, we can say Dr. Bright. If they see his medallion on the floor, SCP-963, lying on the ground, and they go, "Oh, can I roll my skill?" Or you can say, "Roll your skill." And they roll it, and they get a high enough roll, or you can say, "Oh, you know that is a medallion always seen around Dr. Bright's neck, and no one else is allowed to touch it." And that can give them a hint. If they still touch it up after that, that's on them. Um, yeah. And obviously, both the researchers and the D class get rumors, I believe, unless I am dumb. Yeah, get rumors, but obviously a D class rumor would be very different from a researcher rumor. Like a researcher would be like, in all your interactions with Dr. Bright, you know that he had this thing around his neck. As a D class, you're like, some of your buddies in the mess hall have told you about working in 173's cell, and two of them always had to be looking at it at one time. And maybe a researcher rumor for 173 would be like they say when it's not being observed, you can hear the rustling of concrete inside its cell. And then that it gives you two different environments to two different viewpoints to base a rumor off of. Um, so yeah, there are 3 different classes. They'll have unique skills. They have unique equipment. Both the security personnel and researchers have key cards, while the D class do not, and they're just level 1 key cards to move through the general doors of the facilities. And yeah, I feel like that's all I have to say about this. And then they're filling out the character sheet. So let's take a look at the character sheet. So this is the character sheet, and all of this will be linked. So for this, what you would do is you would make a file, then you would make a copy of this, call it whatever you want, copy for Brad, one of your players. And then you would copy it, and there it is. Come on. Takes about a second. And the way I set this up is there's text boxes. So you can write whatever your character's name is here. So let's say Brad uh, Jigs. His role, he is going to be a D class, security level clearance, none. That way it's real easy to fill out. For the skills, there are 3 skills. There's A, B, and C. So an A means you roll 2d20s. So 2d20s. So like if I rolled this once and I got a 14 and then I rolled it again and a 9 and I had an A rank, I would take the higher number. So I'd get 14. If I had a B, you would roll 1d20 and get whatever you get. And if you have C, you would roll 2d20s and you would take the lower value. This way, the players can diverse into different stats if they want to. As the DM, you can mix this around if you don't think it's working right. I feel like it's pretty balanced as is, but that's just me. And the rest can be explained here. So yeah, if they want to make a background for their character, like a short backstory, they can do that in here. And this inventory is just for them to keep track of the SCP documents, and if they find any equipment, such as higher level key cards, they can do that here. And then the condition. So instead of having a set amount of health points, because there are certain SCPs that can just remove your hands or take off your legs or just make you brain dead, this is what this is for. So you can write here, decapitated if you die. You can write 3 broken ribs for the chest. You can write broken wrist. You can have a twisted ankle. So you can keep track of the conditions from body part to body part. So it fits a little bit better with what SCPs do and are. So now moving on to the. Am I missing anything? No. We're going to take the copy, delete it because I don't need this in here. Moving on to the 2 set pre-established facilities. So let me pull up my maps first because the maps have more information. So there's a folder in this folder called maps. These are the 2 facilities. If you notice, there's 3 maps for each. That's intentional. So if I were to show you how these maps work, one is called the player revealed or under player. Basically, you take your maps. One is specifically for the DM. This is a map you don't show to players at all. It has specific information for the DMs, and it has information that is colloquial. So SCP-079 has its colloquial name as Able. It'll say where the key cards are, where things are. It reveals more. This one is the first one for players. If you notice, it has nothing on it. So you have 2 choices. And then this is the one for the players with things that are revealed. So you have 2 options as the DM. You can use this, and then you can draw in the rooms as the players move throughout the facility. Or what I like to do is I use a free Photoshop tool called Pixlr. This is Pixlr. you can open an image. So let's take our, am I blind? Let's take our maps and download them. So let's take this one first, download, put it on my desktop, and then let's go to the other one, download this one, put this also on my desktop. Then we go to Pixlr, we click open, no, not open image. We click create new, full HD, we hit create. This is our little place. And then first we place the revealed one. We click add current. And then we place in the blank one on top. And this way, the players would start here outside Dr. Bright's office. So we make a new layer. And then we get a little paintbrush tool. And this seems a little big, so we're going to make it a tad smaller. It seems good enough. Actually, it seems a little small. We'll make it a little bit bigger. And they start here. And then this little red dot, I can move it around the map wherever I want it to show where the players are going and where they're going to be. And I would be screen sharing this over Discord, or I would, I probably over Discord or anything you can use so the players can see your screen. But you can show where they move around, and then as they move throughout the facility, you can simply take the eraser tool, and then, what? Am I doing something wrong here? Why is this not erasing? Oh, there we go. Oh, I'm stupid. I was on the wrong layer. Whoops! Well, not the wrong layer. I was on the wrong side of the map. You start here. That's why I was confused. And then you can, oh my god, then you can erase it as they go. So this is Dr. Bright's office. It needs a level 2 security card, and they see something here, but they don't know what it is yet. And then they can move throughout the facility. So if they move to this side, they don't see anything until, I believe, here. And you would have your DM map on the other side, so you can have a reference. And then as they went here, you can not erase their marker. You can erase this part of the map. And there's a testing room here. And there is SCP-173's room. And then on your DM map, you would know what's in each of these rooms because it tells you what's in them. For example, we go to the DM version. So this room has Kane, and then this is a seal room for an SCP-3213 named Carl Prosser, which is very funny. As a DM, you would have to look into all these SCPs and know how you want to play them. But I'll give you a quick run through of a game that I've run with players. So I've run this map twice before, and I've run the other one once, and I'm probably going to run it again tonight, which I may or may not record. There's one recording of the second version of this on YouTube already, if you want to see how I run them. So going back to this, for posterity's sake, we're just going to show everything. So what I did with the players is I started them here. I basically said an alarm rings for so-and-so amount of time. Your senior officers or people above you tell you to stay here. Then after 20 minutes, it becomes clear they're not going to come back, and you choose to work with the people around you, even though they're D-class and researchers and security personnel. Right now, what's important is survival. And then they have the choice of going this way or this way, and they can meet different SCPs as they go throughout the facility, use different SCPs. And I would say, like, the facility, it looks like a mess. Over here, it seemed like they were moving things out. For the catalyst of what was happening, if you see, I said a rubble. I basically said to start it out, like, okay, so you heard throughout the morning that later in the day, they were going to be delivering a new SCP. And they were moving out a lot of SCPs to make room for this new SCP because no one was really sure what it would do yet. And then I would basically make it sound like some giant entity just walking in. I was like, from the distance, you hear a boom, boom, boom. And I would say, like, it gets closer. Sounds like stomping, sounds like the ground shaking. Boom, boom, boom. And then I would say, you hear a loud crash from above you. And then sirens start alarming. There's been a containment breach in multiple cells. And half the top half the facility is rubble now. Like some huge thing stepped on it. Now, I don't really know what I would pick for this huge SCP. Doesn't really matter because you never get to see it. And then this prompts the players on this journey to escape the facility. And then in my document for the first one, I have the list of the floors of the facility, and then I have the list of the SCPs. So if you give your players a document, like for example, in whoops, this is not the DM version of the map. In this testing room, there's the documents for Kane, so SCP-073. You can give the players like the just Google like SCP-073. That just says 07. Whoops, 3. Click this and then just send it to them via Discord or something. But this is a lot of information, especially for reading. I'm not sure about your players, but the players who I play with are the laziest human beings I could possibly imagine. Which is why I wrote out a brief description of every SCP, just the information they need to know to survive them, here. So if they want to go off this information and just run off it, this is for them. So you can basically take this bit of information, copy and paste it to them, send it to them via Discord, or pass them the information somehow, or just verbally tell them this, depending on whether you want the other players to know or not. And it's good to keep it all in mind for the DM as well. And then down here, I have the characters in the first one. So you have Dr. Jack Bright, who is the site director here, and whose consciousness is linked to SCP 963. If someone touches 963, Dr. Bright permanently takes over her body. So that character is dead. They become an NPC at that point. Dr. Bright has no fear of death, and he will use the opportunity of this containment breach to observe the SCPs in this rare circumstance. Because he knows that most of the SCPs in this facility aren't dangerous enough to not be recontained after they escape. I would think the most dangerous SCP in the first facility, I don't know, let's take a look at it. Probably, yeah, definitely the Immortal Lizard. But it is an immortal lizard, but it's also not like a god-shattering entity. So I don't think it's that terrible if it got away. It would definitely be really hard to get it back under containment, but I don't think it'd be impossible. Yeah, Dr. Bright basically he is loyal to the facility, but he also does a lot of crazy stuff. Now, Kane is more loyal to the facility than Dr. Bright, and he's also a lot more sensible than him as well. He is an SCP, so he has some weird. Uh, he looks weird, so the players may not trust him at first, which is why I included the documents for SCP-73 in the facility so they can find it. And Kane will help the players throughout, as well as if they run into SCP 76 or Able, he can act as a distraction. Uh, the first campaign, the first one shot, it's a lot of running around and running away from the SCPs, and the second one is a lot more of interacting with the SCPs. Uh, SCP-239 in this scenario would be awake and would be basically right at the beginning of her containment. She wouldn't have been in facility care for long, and this would be basically when they were giving her a spell book to control her powers. Um, and in the second campaign, I've been a lot more focused on her, but she will not trust the players, especially if they lie to her. In fact, it could only make things worse because of the way her anomalous properties work. But you can run that however you'd like. Story beats. So these are some story beats that you can have while they're moving throughout the facility. So Kane will insist on keeping the other SCPs confidential, but to gain the party's trust, he will divulge two SCPs of their choosing. So Kane can accompany the party, and then if the party's like, "Okay, tell us about this one," you can send the player the brief description and the document for the SCP, and just say like Kane gives it to them. Um, yeah, this is a little map, but all the maps are linked as well. So I think that's it for the first one. Since this is a one shot, count on some players dying. I haven't had a player get through. On I have two parties, one who are like D&D veterans, and another one who are like pretty noobs to D&D. And the veterans got through scot free. I tried my best to kill them, but they managed to get through the entire facility alive. With the noob crew, on the first campaign, one made it out, and on the second one, two made it out of four on each. So you can run this as mean or as nice as you want, but this is a one shot, and it's not going to be a long campaign where if someone dies, they're going to be out of it for hours and hours and hours of content. No, this should only last like 1 day to run. Moving on to the second one. So let's get out of the maps, and this is the second one. So this one's a little bit more complex. So again, there's 3 maps, so you can overlay it and erase it as you go, or you can draw on the rooms if you want. So we go back to the maps. We are just going to look at the DM version of it. Let's see if I include, okay, yeah, that's right. That's also correct. Just making sure. So this one, instead of using shapes to save the security passes on the doors, I decided to color code them, just to add a little bit of color to the map. So the players would start here at this testing room with the birthday monkey, or I actually replaced well, I kind of replaced the birthday monkey. Yeah, this is the second one. I have an option for the puppy machine, which is a really fucked up SCP, but it's also completely safe. So you can either start it with the SCP 983 or SCP 1459 as the first thing, just to give them a little bit of an introduction. If you want it to be a little bit more serious, I suggest going with 1459. If you want it to be a little bit more lighthearted, I would go with the birthday monkey. So if you go with the birthday monkey, I would have the player sing their best rendition of Happy Birthday, and depending on the results, I would pick a D class to do this on, and depending on the results, yeah, uh, you can choose whether to age them up or let them go back to their normal age. It's a good way to throw the players directly into the story. Sorry about that, but yes. So as I was saying, you start here, and then basically similar scenario as before, except with this one, you basically just tell the players that the on-site nuke has been activated, and basically the researchers leave them there. They said, "We'll be right back. We're going to find out what's happening." Uh, they basically leave and do not come back. The only ones who are left in the facility are the D class. So these are D class cells full of D class, which they can use or not. And you can have fun with the D class and good old SCP-2662, who spawns random cults that will try to go and basically capture him. Uh, I didn't do that with my previous campaign. I did something a little bit different. And this is one that I have a recording of. So this facility, a completely different layout. I decided to do something a little bit more interesting. So your players start here, and Dr. Clef has access to his office to get a key card, or you can have them roll like an 18 or higher in the cubicles, or D class might have one. It depends if they win over the D class trust. SCP-343 will not help them because they quote unquote he doesn't want to interfere in manners of mankind. Or you can have whatever BS excuse you want. In Dr. Bright's office, I decided to have the SCP-3558, which is a craft knife that makes you want to cut out your own eyelids. So that should give the party a little bit of a panic. Dr. Clef will be held in this holding cell. Basically, this whole thing, like the on-site nuke, nothing has escaped from this facility, but Dr. Bright has activated the on-site nuke to give Dr. Clef the opportunity to kill SCP-239 because she's quote unquote dangerous, but she hasn't done anything as of yet, and she's currently being sedated in a coma. However, she has been like overcoming the coma and waking up from it, and they have to like change it up. So, yeah, there's a lot of lore and a lot of contradictions with SCP-239 and several other SCPs, so you can run it however you would like to run it, but that's the way I would run it. SCP-166 has had an entry revisement recently. Um, SCP-166, the Teenage Succubus, as it used to be called, is Dr. Clef's daughter, and he will not be happy with Dr. Bright after if he finds out that she is still in the facility. So in not this, this. In this, these are the SCPs that are found in this facility. So instead of floors of the facility, we have the wings of the facility. We have the what did I put? I didn't put the puppy machine in this one. Oh, whatever, I guess. If you want to stick it in there, it's in there. These are the SCPs in this one. There is a lot of safe SCPs and a lot fewer Keter and Euclid, unlike the other one. In the first facility, I have the players basically running away and trying to evade most of the stuff. So it's a lot of running. In the second campaign, it's a lot of interactions with the SCPs and talking to them. So most of the SCPs are sapient and they're humanoid, so you can talk and interact with them, and a lot less of mindless monsters trying to chase you. I believe the only mindless monster in this is SCP-173, which I did not want to put into the first one because it seemed a little bit too. I don't want to say cliche. I didn't want to make it seem like a clone of Containment Breach. But I do still have Shy Guy and the Plague Doctor. For the Plague Doctor is a sentient person. It's not a mindless dude. He's working. He's quote unquote working with the facility to cure the pestilence, as he quote unquote says. The pestilence is not the Black Death. It is something that only he can quote unquote detect in people. And if he detects someone with the pestilence, he will try to kill them, and then he can turn corpses into zombies that are quote unquote cured of the pestilence. And they will become an instance of SCP 049 1. And he will try to do that to the players if he sees them, especially if they're a D boy. If you have a player who got assigned to this SCP, clearly they wouldn't have the pestilence, so I would keep that in mind. But I am starting to talk about both things, and I should only be talking about one. Okay, what else is here? Yeah, so for the characters, this is the list that I'm using here. So Dr. Jack Bright is working with a member of the O5 Council. So just a random member to perpetrate this. So this was not sanctioned by the O5 Council. It's one member going rogue for the betterment of the whole facility. He is trying to work with Dr. Jack Bright to manipulate Dr. Clef to kill 239. To do this, Dr. Clef will try to get this SCP, SCP-668, which is a large kitchen knife. And if you're wielding this kitchen knife, if someone has the intent to like attack you or harm you, they simply cannot do it. If they are on the other side of the world and they're trying to push a nuke button to blow you up, they will physically not be able to press that button. And if you express the intent to kill someone, they will freeze up and they can't do anything against you. The story beats play like this one, a little bit more like a choose your own adventure. It's not as linear as the first facility. So, with the characters and how they go, I'm not going to explain every path of this. You can read it for yourself. If you have any questions, you can leave a comment and I will try to get back to you. Um, and yeah, if you have questions that are too long for a comment, we can talk on Discord. Mm, I have some more optional story beats here, and it says you can replace the SCP in the starting room with the puppy machine to set a tone for a one shot or to add variety. If you're running it more than one time with like a couple of the same people to give it a little bit more life. Um, as the DM, you can roll D20 every time a party member moves to a different area for an instance of SCP-1048, which is Builder Bear. So it's this one. It is currently uncontained in the facility, just lurking in the walls and the ventilation. So he could be literally anywhere, and he makes different instances of himself out of different materials. So there's a couple of known instances of it, but you can always get creative and make up something yourself. But it can be something very interesting for a party to run into. And let's see. For the last one, uh, if the party is taking a situation too lightly, add a button to the underside of Dr. Bright's desk if a player pushes it to release 3 random SCPs. So in Dr. Jack Bright's office, which is here, I would say having a button under his desk to activate. Sorry about that, but underneath Dr. Jack Bright's desk, if they roll high enough perception, I would say they notice a big red button. If they press it, like if the party's not being cautious enough and they decide to start pushing random buttons, it should release 3 random SCPs. You can determine this either with a dice roll, which is what I would do, keep it random, keep it fresh, or you can pick the ones you want to let loose. For the first uh one, for the first one shot, I have something similar in Dr. Jack Bright's office. Underneath his desk, basically, the players will find a box. In that box will be the key card that they need and a photo facing down. Shy Guy is in this, and it will be a picture of Shy Guy's face. Now, the first time I ran this, I had one of the party members who saw the photo and they're like, "Oh, I know exactly what this is." They picked up the photo and then they just showed it right to another party member's face. And I'm not going to bend the rules for anyone. So, uh, it took a little while, but SCP-096 reached containment and that party member swiftly died. God, why do I play with some people? But yes, all the in short, all the information for your players. Oh, whoops! This is my drive. One-shot files. Give this and this to your players to see. These are for you as the DM, and for these maps, you can overlay them on top of each other in a layer and erase the layer and move around some sort of marker in order to tell the players where they are. And then 2 of these maps are for you, the DM. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me in the comments. If your question's too big, we can even talk on Discord. Um, but yeah, I feel like that's about it. I don't think I'm missing anything. I am planning on making another version of this campaign, another one shot that is a continuation from it. If you're playing with the same people, I recommend starting with the first one and then moving to the second one, and basically having this plot line be oh, you started here, you survived, so you are no longer a junior researcher, now you're just a researcher. Or you're no longer a security rookie, now you are just a security member. If they're a D class, obviously they're still going to be a D class, but they'd be a more respected D class. They would get better positions and they would be treated with more respect. So you can kind of run this as a campaign. Obviously, there's no option for um, movement in skills as they go up, but there is the different classes do mean something, and sure, the characters can pick whatever class they want to be, uh, but I would try to encourage your players to play different classes because obviously, if they had a team of 3D class, they don't have key cards, they're not going to be able to get through first door. Um, yeah, but all the information's here. You can read it for yourself, and that's all I have to say. Have a good one. And if you liked it, leave a like on the video. If you want to see more content like this, drop a like, and we'll see y'all in the next video. Bye bye. Peace.